A Marine refused to let go of the flag, but what no one knew was that it wasn't just a flag, it was his last goodbye. Stay until the end. Do real stories move you? Subscribe for more. Sir, I'm going to have to ask you to step away from the flag. The airport manager's voice cut through the noise of the place. Security was approaching. People turned their heads. Tension filled the air. But the Marine didn't move. His hand remained firm on the casket covered with the U.S. flag. Silence, steadiness, focus, to everyone. It looked like cargo to him. It was something far more sacred, the manager repeated, louder. You are not allowed to touch the cargo. Still, the Marine didn't move. Then he spoke calmly. With all due respect, sir, this is not cargo. This is a Marine. Beneath that flag was Corporal Jake Morrison. Only 23 years old. Fallen in combat. Not just a fallen soldier, but his soldier. The one he trained. The one he carried on his back through the hills of Afghanistan. Now he was carrying him home one last time. You're delaying operations, said a TSA agent. We have rules. The Marine looked at him and answered with something that froze the room. There are protocols. And then there is honor. And in that moment, everyone understood. This wasn't about rules. It was about duty, brotherhood, loss, and love. The staff hesitated. The passengers stood still. It no longer felt like an airport. It was a sacred ground of respect. And at the center, one man stood firm. Not for attention, but for the one who could no longer stand. The Marine remained unmoving on the outside, firm on the inside. A storm of memories. Jake's goofy smile after training. That time he burned the lemon pie, trying to imitate his mom, the sound of his voice humming country roads after every mission. He said it was his soul's GPS. The Marine remembered, his heart tight. He could have explained the honor behind it all, the silent watch, the unwritten code, the last goodbye to a fallen soldier. But there are things you don't explain. You simply do not, and then it happened. A voice, soft, innocent, broke the tension. Mommy, why is he touching the flag? A little girl, no older than 6, with a teddy bear, pure gaze. Everyone turned, even the Marine. Firm as a rock, leaned down a little and looked at her. His voice was soft, like a whisper, because he's making sure that someone gets home. Time stopped. The guards lowered their hands. The airport manager's eyes welled with tears. No one spoke, no one moved. With that phrase, everyone felt it. It was not just a box, it was not just a delay in an airport schedule, it was a man with every ounce of his strength and devotion, carrying another man home, a military escort, a last goodbye. A sacred promise then. The Marine began to walk, slowly, deliberately, his hand never once leaving the American flag that draped the casket. There were no orders being shouted. There was no permission granted. There was only one thing that drove him forward, purpose. And as he moved step by step, the airport around him began to change. It was no longer just a crowded terminal filled with noise and travelers in a hurry. It had been transformed into something far different, to a place of memory, of reverence, of honor. The Marine kept walking, his pace steady and unbroken, each step echoing through the terminal like a drumbeat of respect, each breath heavy with the weight of remembrance. But he did not stop. He could not stop. And then, it happened, one by one. Passengers rose quietly from their seats. They removed their hats in solemn respect. They lifted their phones, not for spectacle or entertainment, but to preserve a memory they knew was sacred. Someone, almost in a whisper, began to sing the national anthem. Another voice joined, then another, until the sound grew and filled the air. A veteran seated in a wheelchair lifted his trembling hand to his forehead and gave the most powerful salute his body could still manage, rolled freely down the faces of strangers. It was not just a box. He was not forgotten. He was a hero. And he was finally home at the gate. Jake's family waited in anguish and anticipation. His mother saw the flag first, and before her body could even register the weight of her grief, she collapsed to the ground in sobs. His father, too broken to speak, straightened his back with all the strength he had left, and raised his hand in a solemn salute. His sister fell to her knees, her hands covering her mouth, as her voice broke into a whisper. "Welcome home, Jake." The Marine stopped at last. He drew in a deep breath, gathering every ounce of discipline to hold back the storm in his chest. And then he slowly released the flag. His hands, slightly trembling, but determined, folded the cloth with precision until it formed a perfect triangle. He lowered himself onto one knee before Jake's mother and gently placed the folded flag into her arms. He did not die alone, the Marine whispered softly. He was loved. He was honored. The terminal fell silent then. The airport manager no longer standing tall with authority, but simply human. Stripped of pride, stepped forward with tears in his eyes. His voice shook as he admitted, "I didn't understand." The Marine met his gaze and answered in a voice that carried the weight of truth. "Now you do." From the far end of the terminal, a slow applause began. It was not loud, not thunderous, but it was filled with sincerity and respect. A wave of recognition and gratitude swept over the crowd, and in that moment, America remembered some heroes never make it home. But because of one Marine, Corporal Jake was not forgotten. If this story touched your heart, share it and subscribe for more true and deeply moving stories.